The dangerous man. There is a type of man who moves through the world differently than others, who operates according to principles most people do not understand, who possesses qualities that make him formidable, unpredictable, impossible to manipulate or control. This is not the violent man, not the loud man, not the one who projects aggression to compensate for inner weakness. This is the dangerous man in the truest sense, the one with sharp focus that cuts through distraction, ghost-like presence that makes him invisible until he chooses to be seen, unstoppable mind that bends reality through sheer will and psychological fortitude. Machiavelli understood these men. He wrote about them in The Prince, studied them in history, recognized that power belongs not to the good but to the psychologically strong, not to the moral but to the strategically intelligent, not to those who follow rules but to those who understand when rules serve them and when rules must be transcended. The dangerous man is not defined by physical strength or social status, but by psychological qualities that make him effective, formidable, capable of achieving his goals, regardless of obstacles or opposition. These qualities can be developed. They are not gifts of birth, but results of deliberate cultivation, of understanding psychology, of training the mind and emotions towards specific ends. This is the psychology that builds dangerous men. Sharp focus, the power of single-minded purpose. The dangerous man possesses focus that is qualitatively different from ordinary concentration. This is not the ability to pay attention for extended periods, but is single-minded purpose that organizes his entire life around specific objectives, that eliminates everything that does not serve his goals, that creates psychological alignment where thought, emotion, and action all point toward the same end. This focus is not merely mental discipline, but is complete commitment, is willingness to sacrifice everything that does not advance the purpose. Machiavelli observed that successful princes, the ones who gained and maintained power, shared this quality of ruthless focus. They did not scatter their energy across multiple objectives. They did not allow emotions or relationships or moral concerns to distract them from what they sought to achieve. They identified what they wanted, calculated what was required to get it, and executed without hesitation or deviation, without being pulled off course by sentiment or social pressure or conventional morality. This focus requires clarity about objectives that most people never achieve. Most drift through life responding to circumstances, reacting to others' demands, pursuing goals they inherited rather than chose, never asking themselves what they actually want with enough honesty to name it clearly. But the dangerous man knows exactly what he pursues, has examined his desires until he understands which are genuine and which are imposed, has chosen his objectives consciously rather than accepting them unconsciously. The focus also requires elimination, the deliberate cutting away of everything that does not serve the purpose. Most people accumulate obligations, relationships, activities, commitments that fragment their energy, that pull them in different directions, that prevent the kind of concentrated effort required for significant achievement. The dangerous man is ruthless about elimination, says no to what does not serve, walks away from what distracts, burns bridges when bridges become chains. This creates what appears from outside as tunnel vision, as obsession, as inability to see anything beyond the goal. And in a sense, this perception is correct. The dangerous man has deliberately narrowed his field of vision, has chosen what matters and made everything else irrelevant, has created psychological conditions where his entire being is mobilized toward specific ends. This is not blindness, but strategic limitation, not weakness, but concentration of force. The power of this focus is that it allows sustained effort over time that defeats opponents with more resources but less concentration, that achieves what seems impossible through sheer persistence applied to single objectives, that creates results through psychological intensity rather than through advantages of birth or circumstance. Ghost-like presence, the art of strategic invisibility. The dangerous man moves through the world like a ghost, present but not noticed, observing without being observed, influencing without revealing himself as the source of influence. This is not literal invisibility, but strategic control of what others see, when they see it, and how they interpret what they see. The ghost-like presence reveals nothing that does not serve his purposes, maintains mystery where others seek attention, operates from positions others do not recognize until action has already been taken. Machiavelli understood that visibility is vulnerability. The person who announces their intentions, who makes their plans known, who operates openly and predictably, this person gives opponents time to prepare, gives enemies opportunity to interfere, gives rivals information they can use for sabotage. But the person who moves unseen, who keeps intentions hidden, who reveals only what serves strategic purposes, this person maintains initiative, strikes before opponents recognize threat, achieves objectives before resistance can organize. This ghost-like quality requires discipline that most people do not possess. We are social creatures who crave recognition, who want others to see our achievements, who need validation and attention and acknowledgement. The dangerous man has transcended this need, or has learned to suppress it, has recognized that the satisfaction of being seen is less valuable than the power of remaining hidden, has chosen strategic advantage over ego gratification. The ghost-like presence also means becoming unremarkable, blending into surroundings, presenting an exterior that does not trigger attention or alarm. This is not about being boring, but about controlling the signal sent, about appearing ordinary while being extraordinary, about hiding capability behind masks of normalcy. The person who looks dangerous is watched. The person who appears harmless moves freely, gathers information without suspicion, positions himself before others recognize he is a player in the game. This invisibility is selective and strategic. The dangerous man is not always hidden, but chooses when to be seen and when to disappear, when to make his presence felt and when to operate from shadows. He appears when it serves his purposes, when visibility creates advantage, when being seen accomplishes what being hidden cannot. But he defaults to invisibility, to operating unseen, to maintaining the option of surprise. The power of ghost-like presence is that it creates unpredictability, denies opponents the information they need to counter his moves, allows him to act while others are still trying to understand what he intends, maintains freedom of action that visibility would constrain. Emotional detachment, power through distance. The dangerous man has mastered emotional detachment, not as absence of emotion, but as strategic control over how emotions influence decisions and actions. He feels but is not controlled by feelings, observes his emotional responses without being possessed by them, uses emotions as information rather than allowing them to dictate behavior. This detachment creates power through psychological distance, through the ability to think clearly when others are overwhelmed, to act rationally when others are paralyzed by fear or driven by anger. Machiavelli recognized that emotion is the enemy of effective action. The prince who acts from love makes himself vulnerable to those he loves. The leader who acts from anger makes predictable mistakes that enemies exploit. The person driven by fear becomes paralyzed or reckless. Emotion clouds judgment, creates blind spots, makes people manipulable by those who understand which emotional buttons to push. The dangerous man has severed the automatic connection between feeling and action, has created space between stimulus and response where calculation can occur. This detachment is particularly evident in relationships. Most people become emotionally entangled, allow relationships to create dependencies, make themselves vulnerable through attachment and the fear of loss. The dangerous man maintains psychological independence, even within relationships, never allows another person to become so necessary that their loss would destroy him, never invests so completely that betrayal would be devastating. He can walk away from any relationship when it no longer serves his purposes, can end connections without the emotional turmoil that paralyzes others. This does not mean the dangerous man is incapable of genuine connection or affection, but his connections are chosen rather than compulsive, are maintained through conscious decision rather than through emotional need, can be severed when strategy requires it without the crippling grief that immobilizes those who are emotionally dependent. He loves strategically rather than helplessly, forms attachments consciously rather than falling into them, maintains the ability to choose his emotional investments rather than being chosen by them. The detachment also extends to outcomes. Most people become so attached to specific results that failure devastates them, that setbacks trigger emotional collapse, that obstacles create despair. The dangerous man pursues objectives with full commitment, but maintains psychological distance from outcomes, recognizes that any specific plan might fail, prepares alternatives, accepts that some goals will not be achieved. This prevents the emotional volatility that destroys effectiveness, that makes people quit after failures, that creates the kind of desperate attachment to outcomes that blinds them to better opportunities. The unstoppable mind, mental fortitude. The dangerous man possesses mental fortitude that ordinary obstacles cannot break, that setbacks cannot discourage, that opposition cannot deter. This is not optimism or positive thinking, but is psychological resilience built on realistic assessment of difficulty, combined with absolute commitment to continue regardless of cost. The unstoppable mind does not deny that the path is hard, but concludes that hardship is irrelevant, that suffering is acceptable price, that obstacles are problems to solve rather than reasons to quit. Machiavelli studied leaders who achieved the impossible, who built empires from nothing, who overcame opposition that should have destroyed them. What united these figures was not superior resources or favorable circumstances, but psychological qualities that allowed them to persist when others would have surrendered, to continue when continuation seemed irrational, to endure what would break normal men. This mental fortitude is not innate, but is cultivated through deliberate exposure to difficulty, through choosing hard paths, through refusing to quit even when quitting would be easier. The unstoppable mind reframes obstacles as information rather than as barriers. Where others see setback and conclude the goal is unattainable, the dangerous man sees feedback about what approach does not work and adjusts strategy accordingly. Where others interpret failure as evidence they should give up, he interprets it as necessary stage in the process of eventual success. This reframing is not self-deception, but is strategic interpretation, choosing the psychological frame that maintains forward momentum rather than the one that justifies retreat. This mental fortitude also includes willingness to endure discomfort that stops others. Most people organize their lives around comfort, avoid pain, quit when things become difficult, choose easy paths over effective ones. The dangerous man has a different relationship to discomfort, has learned to tolerate and even embrace suffering when suffering serves his purposes, has recognized that the capacity to endure what others cannot endure creates competitive advantage, gives him access to achievements that remain forever out of reach for those who need comfort. The unstoppable mind does not depend on motivation or inspiration to continue. Motivation is emotional and therefore unreliable, rises and falls with circumstances, disappears precisely when most needed. The dangerous man operates instead from commitment, from decision made and held regardless of how he feels, from discipline that continues executing even when desire has vanished, from systems and structures that maintain forward progress independent of emotional state. Combining the traits, the complete psychology. The true power emerges not from possessing these traits individually, but from their integration, from how sharp focus, ghost-like presence, and unstoppable mind combine to create psychological architecture that is greater than the sum of its parts. Each trait amplifies the others, creates conditions that make the others more effective, builds toward a psychology that is formidable, precisely because it operates according to principles most people do not understand and cannot counter. Sharp focus without ghost-like presence becomes visible obsession, announces to everyone what you pursue, gives opponents time to prepare defenses, makes you predictable and therefore vulnerable. But sharp focus combined with ghost-like presence allows you to pursue objectives invisibly, to work toward goals while others remain unaware of your intentions, to achieve before opposition recognizes what you are building. The focus provides direction while the invisibility provides protection. Ghost-like presence without unstoppable mind becomes mere hiding, becomes avoidance rather than strategy, becomes fear of being seen rather than deliberate choice about visibility. But ghost-like presence combined with mental fortitude creates patience, creates ability to remain unseen for as long as necessary, to endure the frustration of not being recognized while building power in shadows, to wait for the perfect moment to reveal yourself rather than seeking premature validation. Unstoppable mind without sharp focus becomes scattered persistence, becomes continuing forward without clear direction, becomes stubborn refusal to quit even when quitting would be wise. But unstoppable mind combined with sharp focus creates relentless progress towards specific objectives, creates ability to overcome any obstacle between you and your goal, creates the kind of sustained effort that defeats opponents with more resources but less determination. When all three traits combine, they create psychology that is nearly impossible to defeat. The dangerous man knows exactly what he wants and pursues it with complete focus. He moves toward his objectives invisibly, revealing nothing that would allow interference, maintaining surprise until the moment of action. And he continues, regardless of obstacles, setbacks, or opposition, enduring what would break normal men, persisting until objectives are achieved, or until genuine impossibility is proven rather than merely assumed. This combination also creates psychological independence that makes the dangerous man immune to the weapons that control normal men. He cannot be distracted because his focus eliminates distraction. He cannot be monitored because his presence is ghost-like. He cannot be discouraged because his mind is unstoppable. The normal tools of social control, shame, approval, pressure, manipulation, these slide off him because he operates according to different psychological principles. Becoming dangerous, integration, and warning. These traits can be developed, but the development is not comfortable, not easy, not something that happens through reading or wishing or casual effort. Becoming dangerous requires deliberate cultivation over years, requires exposing yourself to difficulties that forge these qualities, requires choosing the hard path repeatedly until the psychology becomes automatic, becomes who you are rather than what you perform. Sharp focus is built through elimination and commitment. You must ruthlessly cut away everything that does not serve your objectives, must learn to say no to distractions, however attractive, must choose your goals with enough clarity that you can recognize what advances them and what does not. This requires extended periods of concentrated effort on single objectives, requires resisting the modern tendency towards scattered attention and shallow engagement, requires depth over breadth, mastery over dabbling. Ghost-like presence is developed through strategic restraint. You must learn to control the impulse, to be seen, to be recognized, to have your achievements acknowledged. You must practice revealing nothing that does not serve your purposes, must become comfortable with being underestimated, must find satisfaction in results rather than in recognition. This requires suppressing ego, requires patience, requires accepting that power is more valuable than fame. The unstoppable mind is forged through voluntary exposure to hardship. You must deliberately choose difficult paths, must refuse to quit when quitting would be easier, must build tolerance for discomfort through practice. This means taking on challenges that push you beyond current capacity, means continuing when motivation fails, means establishing disciplines that you maintain regardless of how you feel. The mind becomes unstoppable by practicing, not stopping, by proving to yourself repeatedly that you can endure more than you thought possible. But with these warnings, the dangerous man operates outside normal social and moral constraints, sees rules as obstacles rather than as obligations, views other people as pieces on a chessboard rather than as ends in themselves. This psychology creates power, but it also creates isolation, creates inability to form genuine connections, creates life that is effective but may be empty, that achieves goals but may sacrifice meaning. The truly dangerous man understands this cost and chooses consciously whether to pay it. He recognizes that these traits make him formidable but may make him alone, make him effective but may make him inhuman, give him power but may cost him peace. The question is not whether you can develop these traits, but whether you should, whether the power they provide is worth what they demand, whether becoming dangerous is worth what it costs. Conclusion: the psychology that builds dangerous men is not for everyone, should not be for everyone, creates individuals who are formidable but who operate according to principles that most people find uncomfortable or incomprehensible. Sharp focus, ghost-like presence, and unstoppable mind combine to create psychology that is nearly impossible to defeat, but that requires sacrifices most are unwilling to make. Understanding these traits reveals why certain men seem to move through the world differently, seem immune to the pressures that control others, seem capable of achieving what appears impossible. They have developed psychological qualities that most lack, have made choices about what to cultivate and what to sacrifice, have built minds that operate according to Machiavellian principles rather than according to conventional morality or social expectations. These traits can be developed through deliberate practice, through years of cultivation, through choosing repeatedly the path that builds strength over the path that provides comfort. But the development requires honest assessment of whether you truly want to become this kind of person, whether you are willing to pay the costs, whether the power these traits provide is worth the isolation and the moral compromises they demand. The dangerous man is not the violent man or the criminal or the sociopath. He is the one who has mastered his psychology, who operates strategically, who pursues objectives with focus and invisibility and mental fortitude that normal obstacles cannot stop. But he has also chosen to develop qualities that separate him from ordinary human experience, that make genuine connection difficult, that create effectiveness at the cost of certain forms of meaning. Machiavelli's wisdom applies here. These traits make you formidable but also make you different, make you powerful but also make you alone, give you capabilities others lack but demand, sacrifices others would not make. The choice is yours. If this exploration of the psychology that builds dangerous men has shown you qualities you recognize in yourself or want to develop, understand that this is not path to take lightly, not psychology to cultivate casually, not traits to develop without counting the cost. These qualities create power but demand sacrifice, create effectiveness but may cost peace. Subscribe to this channel if you seek content that explores dark psychology without romanticizing it, that examines power dynamics honestly, that respects Machiavellian realism while acknowledging its costs. Share this with those who need to understand what separates dangerous men from ordinary men, what creates psychological strength that normal obstacles cannot break. Leave a comment sharing which of these traits you possess, which you are developing, whether you believe the power they provide is worth what they demand. This community exists for those interested in psychological development at its extremes, in understanding what makes certain men formidable, in cultivating strength without illusions about its costs. Remember, becoming dangerous is choice with consequences. Sharp focus eliminates much of normal life. Ghost-like presence creates isolation. Unstoppable mind requires enduring what breaks normal men. These traits build power but demand everything. Choose consciously, count the cost, understand what you are building before you commit to building it. The psychology of dangerous men is revealed. Whether you develop it is your choice, but make that choice with eyes open, understanding both the power and the price.